Believe it or not, happiness is more powerful and wide-reaching in Civilization 7 than it has ever been before. And I reckon nobody out there is using happiness to its full potential, me included. It fuels celebrations, cultural policies, as well as culture, growth, and expansionism more broadly. This is the happy little video for you, so sit back and relax and let me teach you everything you need to know and something you didn't know about happiness in Civilization 7. Step 1 of our 5-part journey, generating happiness and understanding it, that important distinction between global and local happiness. Obviously, like most other yields, you'll generate happiness through maybe random events that you run into. More likely, the buildings that you construct and unlock through technology and culture, as well as the natural yields of your tiles and the resources that are hopefully on them. The global happiness total that you're adding per turn is in the top left, and when you click on it, you'll get this breakdown of each individual settlement and its total yields, but of course, here we're just focusing on happiness. Happiness, however, is also spent, like a currency, most similar actually to gold. It can go into the red on individual settlements, but you'll also have an overall, empire-wide count, and that is the global happiness count. If we click back into another example and take a look at a variety of different cities, some contribute, others take away. However, when it comes to global happiness, and the first real key learning from this video is that these negative ones actually don't matter. Global happiness is only calculated using your settlements that are contributing positively. If there's one that's in the red, as far as the global count is concerned, it doesn't matter at all. Step 2 then, it's time to celebrate with all of our extra global happiness, every settlement that is positively contributing, adding to a total pool of extra happiness. Well, that extra happiness gives us our government celebration effects that you'll of course choose at the start of each age. You'll set a type of government, and that will give you two possible options to choose from. Which one you select will be up to you, not really the focus of this video. What we want to know is, though, how do these celebrations actually matter? And why should we focus on building up happiness instead of, say, building up science to get more unlocks, or culture to move through the cultural tree? Well, the key thing to understand about celebrations is that as well as getting that one-off certain amount of turn benefit, you also receive a social policy unlock, or more specifically, a slot. Here's the government screen. You can get into it by clicking the little feather on a piece of paper next to the culture icon in the top left. Once you're in here, you'll be able to see how many turns it'll take for your next celebration, or how long your current celebration event has to go, as well as the income, the amount of happiness that's being added onto this, contributing to the next event per turn. It will give you a slot where you'll be able to slot in a policy that you've already unlocked using the civics tree, using your culture. So you need to trigger this, that we love the demagoguing, blimmin' council, Democrat, communist, whatever day it is, you need to drive these celebration events. And the only way to do that is to have settlements contributing positive happiness per turn, and then allowing that to build up to the threshold that's required to celebrate. The benefit, by the way, the 20% culture or science or whatever, is kind of just a nice, happy extra bonus, and also an incredibly powerful bonus as the age progresses. Celebrations as a whole, in fact, and the benefits of happiness as a whole, is much more noticeable and far more profound toward the end of an age. And so as we draw toward the end of this section, I'm also reminded that happiness is also spent like a currency, much like gold is, and with nasty side effects if you operate in the negative. So then, step 3, let's talk about the heavy lifting that happiness does and the local implications, right? No longer the global ones adding toward those celebrations, but locally. What if you've just captured a settlement and it's in unrest? Or you've just let its happiness degrade to the point where it is in revolt? Well, local unhappiness has some nasty side effects that you might not have been aware of. I certainly wasn't until I saw this. Each point of local unhappiness conveys a -2% penalty to all other yields. Your gold, your production, your science, your culture. Every single point of unhappiness is a 2% debuff to all of those. And we've probably all suffered from districts, buildings being randomly lit on fire and pillaged, or perhaps losing a settlement altogether. Happiness is therefore not to be messed with, and local unhappiness needs to be avoided. So what can we do about it? Well, again, another thing that I think is so easy to overlook, and my first tip for mitigating it. Let's take this settlement here, -18, right? It's in ruins, you could say. Well, moving an army commander onto any settlement in unrest has a fairly significant impact. You can see now we're down to a measly -15.2 unhappiness. But that commander was weak, pathetic. Look at him. One promotion, slowly rolling in there. No. We can do better. So let's take this commander, a little bit more experienced, a few more promotions under his belt. If we march him into the city of Rouen in ruins, you'll notice things change. Jump back into the city screen, and now their unhappiness is actually just at -1.2. We've basically got rid of all of it. It's almost all gone thanks to stationing one commander there. And this commander doesn't even have any promotions that add to city yields. Beyond commanders putting down unrest, there will be some other drains on happiness. Common ones include, of course, if we cast our eyes back up to the top left of our screen again, the settlement limit. Push over this and you'll face -5 happiness in all settlements per settlement that you're over the limit. And building on top of that, just the core fundamental building of a city, once you specialize and start to add specialists in particular, will have obviously pretty significant ramifications on your total happiness. You'll find that the -2s will quickly add up from adding more and more specialists to your tiles. There are, of course, many policies in particular that can mitigate this. However, to get those, you need excess happiness to trigger the celebration events. So, be careful when you're expanding out and placing your specialists. Maybe grow to some rural tiles with happiness first, then come back. Speaking of come back, the thing that will come back again and again and again to attack your happiness may also be the crisis events. Obviously, in the Antiquity Age, there is one about empires falling. This is literally just a happiness crisis. So it is the best example. You might pick up a settlement. You might lose a settlement to revolt. Most crisis events will see you lose some districts. They'll be pillaged, they'll be destroyed, whatever it may be, and that'll hurt your happiness. But if all of that isn't enough, the actual crisis policy cards will probably deliver the final blow. Particularly, and again, to go back to that first example of the loyalty, the happiness crisis in the First Age, the emerging empires, the empires crumbling thing. Speaking of empires crumbling, the last, maybe significant drain on your happiness that you might not expect as well comes in the form of war and conflict. War support and war weariness. You can absolutely spend your influence to boost war support. The player whose war support is a negative number, right? -1, -2, -3, let's say, that's the happiness penalty that they will face in every settlement, as well as facing a combat strength penalty to the same value. It's therefore really, really important that you are in the positive here. Please make sure you are the party that is in the positive, that the war support is in your favor. So, combine those steps of avoiding unhappiness alongside the stuff we talked about in the first part of the video, like resources, happiness buildings. Here you can see, by the way, the specific impact that commanders have, reducing unhappiness by 10%, a further 10% for every promotion. Add all of that together, and you should be in a pretty happy state. But we're not quite done yet. Before we move on to our final section, it's important here for step 4 to reinforce that there really can be no complete civilization, no complete culture without happiness. Not only is happiness fundamental to growth, right? Actually, literally fueling specialists who need food and happiness. You cannot grow your cities up without having a lot of it in excess. But moreover, you don't get the benefits of your culture tree without the extra happiness as well. Sure, you can unlock the wonders. Absolutely. Maybe a Civ unique building and your unique one. Maybe something else like a diplomatic action. But anything that has the feather on it, anything with that oldie-timey pen, is a policy. And you won't be able to actually enact the policy unless you start pumping through your celebrations. You really notice this, I think, as you move through the ages as well. You'll lose all of the cultural policies that you might have unlocked through the culture tree, the possible ones, and you'll just have your base default level of slots. The only things available to you will be your traditions, those things that you unlocked using your culture last age, or the age before. Whatever old Civ you were playing with, their unique ones will stay. But you won't have the slots to use them. You must celebrate early to get the slots, and then continue celebrating your way through to really take advantage of the powerful possible policies you'll unlock as you move through. Celebrations, therefore, are not just important to unlocking the full benefit of culture, but I argue they're important right the way through. Every step of the way, you need those slots, you must celebrate. And finally, step 5, I consider to be almost like step 0. It's a bit like the ace in a DECK of cards. Is it the lowest number or the highest? We're not quite sure. It's on setting up your actual civilization and your leader. Don't forget, there are many civs and leaders who lean directly into happiness, usually with their uniques. Sometimes they're civilians. Charlie will let you pick a celebration bonus. There are loads of different ways to play with it. I would encourage you here really not into one specific one, but rather to just take advantage of these. These will be beneficial to you. And of course, the extra districts that you pick up by choosing civilizations that actually have districts to build, right? Buildings to build. If they're happiness ones, then not only when it comes to overbuilding, are you replacing an old district that now, unless it's ageless, no longer has its proper adjacency bonuses, right? As you move through the ages, normal buildings are just stripped back to their core yield. Well, now you can bowl them down and replace them not just with a building that actually has some sort of adjacency effect, but with a happiness building as well. Don't overlook happiness. Don't do what I've always done in these kind of games and sleep on the happiness or the stability or whatever it may be called, because I think this time around it's more important than it has ever been. Thank you for watching. See you next time.